Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's virtual training session hosted by Africa Fire Mission. My name is Mike. I'm a project coordinator with AFM, and I'm so thankful all of you took time out of your busy schedules to come and join us for today's training. Today's training is going to be about building materials, and we have Bryan Edge back with us today to lead today's training. If you attend at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, you will receive a certificate of attendance for today's training. Keep your eyes in the chat. I'll be posting some information down there where you can get to our Google Drive, where you can take today's training or any previous trainings that we've done this year and receive a certificate of attendance for those as well. I'd also encourage you to stick around after today's training for tea time, where we can discuss more about the topic of the day or anything else that may be on your mind. At this point in time, I'm going to pass it over to Richard for today's word of encouragement. Take it away, Richard.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much, Mike, for being here. I know it's an early morning on your side, and for us, some of us it's already 4 p.m. 4 p.m. So some of us we are winding up the day, and the day has been fruitful. It's raining here. Everything is raining, and we thank God for that. Today's word, I wanted us to talk about patience. Patience is a virtue that each and every firefighter has to have in our workplace, in our houses, in our homes, simply because we have it. Like, I'll give an example with what is happening in Kenya. We are trying to fight the system, also trying to fight ourselves, and trying to come up with a lot of issues, with a lot of opinion on how we should run. The fire system should be led, on how the firefighter should be led in the country. But the things that I'm trying to practice here, we need to practice patience, because if you look at even the development of a child, since when they are born, they don't just grow and walk in the next minute. There is that duration of the first trimester, the second trimester, the third trimester, and then the baby is born. And when the baby is born, they have to start doing conclusive breastfeeding. They have to breastfeed, and they have to be fully dependent to their mother. So as this is what I always take as the fire system in Kenya, or the fire systems that we have to be a little bit patient with things that are happening. I know not everything that happens with as much as we planned or as much as we anticipate, not in that hurry, but things will still run. So today's world of encouragement, I'm trying to encourage everyone who is there. We need to be patient with every situation. Remember, even the Bible says everything happens with a time and with a duration and what God plans. So if you are not patient with God, we are not patient with what God is doing on our side, it means we won't even be patient to ourselves. We need to be patient as firefighters. I know most of the time it happens that we rush on fire scene because of the adrenaline effect, and but also we need to practice patience. So the word of today is we need to practice patience, and we can say a little prayer as we start the lessons. Thank you, our Heavenly us this beautiful. We met last. We are here. We've gathered again. All of us. We pray that you help us practice. Wait for good things. The Bible says that good things those who wait patiently, Jehovah. Give us ability to wait. Give us an understanding, Jehovah. Amen.
Thank you so very much, Richard. At this point in time, I'm going to pass it over to the instructor of today, Bryan Edge, the Chief Training Officer from the Six Nations Fire Department, to get us started with today's topic. Go ahead, Bryan.
Okay, so we're going to go over building materials as far as structural collapse and fire effects of fire suppression. So what do we know about our different building construction materials? What are some of the things that we use, that you guys use in your areas? Or some of the different types?
You guys can go ahead and unmute or raise your hands to answer.
Okay, well, I think you guys use some of the similar products that that we're used to. You guys have wood, right? Some wood, stone, sand. You guys use bricks, metal, some concrete and cement. I did do some research on. I think there is some ESP panels. You guys, there has been some building of that. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that or not. We go over a little bit of that stuff after, and then some roof sheeting, some metal and stuff like that. I think that's some of the more common materials you guys will get used to. I'm assuming that's correct. I get a thumbs up from anyone. Yep. Anything I missed? Any materials that you guys would use that I didn't cover there? Okay, so we're just going to look at a couple of different materials and go through them and kind of see how they react with fire or collapse hazards in building construction. Okay, so we've all seen stone probably being used to build different structures, and it is a strong material. There's different types of there's manual cut stones and machine cut stones. So depending on which ones you have, they're used for building structural foundations and walls. So they can take a high heat, and they can take some actual flame impingement and fire. They can take that, but if they do have any structural instability, they will fire or fall down. And we've seen that it's fairly common from what I've seen gathered in some of your areas, which we'll go over in a little bit. Then there's some sand. You use that kind of in mixture and stuff, using it for different types of mixes. Mud and clay. So this can be found in some parts of the areas. There is good fire resistance properties with this stuff. You can form mud bricks and stuff with it in order to build your structures. So it does stand up to flame as well. And again, depending on what happens with the building itself, as far as structural wise, it can stand up fairly well. Bricks, so it's similar. They can be used for structural, to keep the actual building up, exterior walls and stuff. And they do also handle the heat pretty well. So they stand up pretty well to the fire resistance. But they will fail if there's a lot of heat to them. And it's more so the mortar will break down in between the bricks, and the bricks can fail that way. And then just timber, so your regular timber. That's probably a fairly common form of material. And it will stand up to some flame, but not much. Obviously, we know it is combustible, so it will only take a little bit of flame impingement before it starts to burn. And you're looking at potentially having some sort of covering over top of that if you want to add some fire resistance to it. I'm not sure what you guys would use over top of your timber construction on the inside of the walls. Do you guys have chipboard there? No? Anyone? What kind of coverings we use over top of the interior walls that can add some fire resistance? Anyone?
What type of materials you guys use during the building construction after you've got like a wood frame building, right? What are we looking? What type of materials are we using? Using like a plywood, chipboard, a little bit of. I know there's some drywall. We're looking for a little interaction here, guys. What are you seeing?
Because depending on the material you have on the inside, will add or add to the resistance or take away from it. So to allow it to burn faster and degrade more. Or if it's drywall and stuff, it can add fire resistance values to it. So it's something to think about. What kind of materials you have on the inside as well as the outside. Then there's steel. So steel is pretty good. It does take quite a bit of heat, but it's once it gets up to you know, the higher temperatures, it does fail as well. So you can see that's used for sheeting for interior or exterior and roofs. So that's just an example there where, you know, you start getting that effects on those steel beams. They're going to start to fail and buckle, which can add to your collapse potential. So depending on how long the fire has been burning, and how much flame impingement the heat is on that beam will affect when that may buckle. On this concrete, it's probably fairly common in some of your larger and residential or larger buildings. Your high rises stuff will be concrete. So it's used pretty widely in there. It is fire resistant when it's reinforced with concrete and steel. You can have some spalling and stuff when it does start to heat up. And depending on that steel, where that steel is located, it can cause issues because your concrete will be there, but your steel can be compromised. And there's bamboo. I don't know much about bamboo. I don't know if you guys just throw in the chat if anyone has come across any bamboo structures. I've never seen any bamboo out there. When I was doing research for it, it does say that you guys do have some bamboo in some areas. Has anyone ever come across any of this? Anyone
Yes, Brian, we do have some bamboo in some areas now. It's kind of it's a new phase and it's catching on. Mm-hmm. So we do have some bamboo structures, like some restaurants will have some bamboo structures on the outhouses for like a gazebo, that sort of thing. So it's there.
Yeah, stuff. And just to add on that one, there are other materials that we use in building temporary houses, like here back in Africa. Here we use thatch, the actual grass. We call them thatched houses.
Is that the thatch?
Yeah. Yes, and on the other hand, the bamboos, we use them as trusses for roofing.
Okay, so that's the actual structure, right?
Yes, on the actual structure, like domestic homes, you use bamboos for trussing.
Okay.
For trussing of the roof, yes.
Okay, good.
Hello.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and in Ghana, we use bamboo to support when you're about to flow your building. If your building is a story building, we use bamboo to support the materials that you are putting the iron rod on it. So it helps us a lot.
Like to use it for scaffolding?
Yes, please.
Like scaffolding. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
please.
right on.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. So yeah, so you guys do see it out there. It does have some fire resistant properties apparently that are natural in it. And I think I also read that there's some coatings you can put on it to make it even more fire resistant. So good. That's one that I've never come across. So it was interesting. And there's glass. You can see the glass windows and stuff. So it can stand up to some heat, but it does crack under higher temperatures. And it can fail. Metallic roofing. So that'd be similar or one of the more common ones in certain areas, right? That you guys are responding to. You'll see probably lots of metal roofs and stuff. So that would be stuff that you're gonna have to. It's thin sheeting. So when you're starting to do, your size up, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, that's going to be a big part of it, right? What's on top of that roof and how much weight it's going to be able to take, right? Which is probably not a whole lot. So especially when you get flame impingement on those, doesn't have a whole lot of strength to it. Roofing tiles, again, this is something I'm not really familiar with. Do you guys see a lot of this in your response areas? Roofing tiles, clay tiles?
Yeah, Brian, this is the kind of like the most common style.
Most common?
For the modern houses. Yeah, this is pretty much across Africa. The roofing tiles will come in different styles and different shapes and colors. So this is quite common.
And they're clay and concrete, right? Like
yes, the most be combination of both, and it's baked, and it comes out in the different colors.
So are they fairly fragile as far as like you can break them pretty easily if you wanted to?
Yeah, they're fragile. If you threw it on the ground, it would break. Yes,
it will break,
and
right?
they do. The ones that are really well done last quite a couple of years before you even have to think of replacing them.
Yeah, so it stands up to the weather pretty good, right?
Yes, it does.
Good.
Then those cause a bit of a hazard when you've got exposure to fire, right? You've got those sort of falling and sliding loose and coming towards you.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, because they do get quite loose, and even like on a regular, if you had an antenna on your roof and you're climbing up your antenna, and you want to be careful, you will break some tiles as you move around. Yeah, so they're fragile. If you apply direct pressure on them.
Okay. So it wouldn't be somewhere you'd want to be going up on top of then, really.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be hanging out on top of the roof.
Yeah, as far as vertical ventilation, do you guys, I'm assuming it's probably not a common thing for you guys. Do you guys do vertical ventilation? Like get up on the roof and cut holes and stuff?
No, I've not seen guys getting up on top of the roofs, but that's in Kenya. I don't know about the other countries like Ghana and Zambia. Maybe they have a different style of doing it.
Okay. And you know, Mike, or not sure?
Not a lot, just because of the lack of a good power tool to use, and ladders are sometimes a scarce resource or a little sketchy sometimes.
Okay, good to know. And I think this is probably on your probably higher end homes too, right? This kind of clay tiles, these roofing tiles, a little expensive.
Yes. Yeah, that would be kind of like the cream. Yeah, you get some really good tiles, and the house looks really top notch.
Mm-hmm. Some plaster. So that would just be like kind of plaster on the outside, just for kind of a decorative over top of your brick or your stone for waterproofing and stuff. Plastics. So this is I don't know, anyone know anything about this lady here? Anyone know her? Apparently she is, again, doing some research. She's converting a lot of plastics that are over in that part of the country and into bricks to building with. They're plastic bricks. Has anyone come across anything that's been built by these?
Yeah, Brian, James here again. This is quite new.
It's new?
Yeah, go ahead, Mustafa. Mustafa, go ahead.
Yes, I have seen such a one kind of a building here in Malawi. Of course, it was a project that was on test, but they were using recycled materials where they could take plastic empty bottles, fill them with sand, and work on them as bricks with mortar. Then they came up with a story plus one building. So I still see the building existing up until today. And they recommended it because they said it is even bulletproof and the like.
Okay, so did you say that they're plastic and they fill them with sand?
They collected those plastic water bottles, used ones.
Oh, and
then they were
sand.
filling them with sand to come up with something like a solid thing.
Oh,
then they would line them up with using mortar, one on top of the other, just the way like we line up the bricks when we're constructing a wall.
Okay, I know what you. I did see.
So they came up with a building that is a story plus one, a ground plus one.
Okay, yeah, that was the actual, like, almost like pop bottles, right?
Yes.
Okay, I did see that. So this lady here is she's actually got a process where she can take those bottles and make them into an actual brick. I do remember seeing that a picture of a building that had the sand in the bottles, and they used it as the walls. So, has anyone seen this lady or in any buildings that have been brought for these specific bricks themselves? I'm just curious. I've never seen it, so I'm just kind of.
You mean like you mean like she's processing the plastic, like melting them and molding up something like a brick?
Yes, exactly.
It's a once weekly.
No,
Yeah, Brian, this is the one I was telling you about. It's something that's new to the Kenyan scene, where they're actually making the bricks out of plastic, and they have houses even that they're doing in the informal settlements, where it's totally whole houses constructed of the plastic blocks. Because there's a lot of plastic waste, so they're taking that waste and generating it into building materials.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. So now, has anyone got up and close? I'm just curious as how they're stacking them together, and if they're using kind of a traditional mortar, or if they're using something different. Does anyone have any idea about how that process works?
Yeah, it kind of fits like a Lego, like the Legos do, where they're pre-molded, so they fit into each other. That's kind of how they're doing it. Yeah.
They almost.
I could get you some more info on it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So they overlap then, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Each one overlaps. Cool.
Yes.
So it does. They are good. They're strong and weather resistant. Now the only thing is, I would just be curious. I know plastics here burn quite easily, right? So I wonder maybe if they're dense, they don't burn so well. I would be kind of curious to see if anyone has ever dealt with one on a fire. I know you say they're pretty new, so you may have been lucky enough not to have to be at a call with one of these homes yet. But I don't know if these are burning. I don't know if I'd want to be around there without your self-contained breathing apparatus on. Because if it's anything like the plastics that we burn over here in Canada, there's a lot of toxics coming out of that stuff, right?
Yeah, so what they do over here, they finish the house in the plastic, and then it's covered with a mortar on the outside and the inside to give like an insulation. So the plastic will be between two layers of mortar.
Okay.
And then the roof comes at the top. Yeah, so it's kind of a bit different. I haven't seen one in the fire yet, but that's kind of how it goes for this one.
Cool. So it'd have to break the heat would have to break the mortar down first before it got to the plastic.
Roger.
Cool. Here's the thatch that we had kind of talked about earlier. So it's the now this would be obviously would be issue with fire, right? It's not going to stand up too well to fire, especially if it's dry. Anyone have any information on thatch, the thatch roofs, and that? How common is it? And have you ever been to any calls with this material? It's something I'm not familiar with. So.
I believe a few months ago there was there a resort in Malawi that had a lot of these thatched roofs that burnt.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. I actually went to attend to that fire. There was what we call Kumbali Lodge. It's a building that is the walls are made of the actual brick with cement, but the roofs are thatched. So there was a scenario where, I don't know, it was a power line or something. There was a spark that triggered fire on the
I'm assuming that these they wouldn't last long with fire.
thatched roof.
Now, do they put mud and stuff in it, or is it all just kind of dry kind of a thatch material? Like they wouldn't stand up very well to fire, I would assume.
No, it's a dry thatch and it burns very, very quickly.
Yeah, quick, right? Okay. So yeah, for as far as responses, when you guys get there, it'll be perhaps trying to save the exposures beside them, if you can, right? But I'm sure they'd probably burn pretty hot too.
Yeah, they burn quite hot, and then the roof always collapses very quickly.
Ceramic tiles. So this is just another building construction type used for decorative and stuff, right? You guys probably see some of the stuff in some of the buildings and stuff you go to. Not much to it. It's just for more decorative. This is the expanded polystyrene panels. So we do have this. This is not huge where I'm from. There are some buildings that are building with these type of panels. So has anyone seen any of these in your areas?
No, this is a new one to me, Brian.
Okay, because this is taken out of your response area. It's in Kenya somewhere. That's being built, and I did find some information on it, so they are definitely out there. So
we see some of this in commercial structures where they have that where it's covered with like a stucco material, you know,
yes.
And it's basically just in my particular area we have multiple multi-story hotels, and it's kind of scary because the exterior walls are made of, you know, they're not a load bearing, but they're made of basically just a styrofoam.
With concrete on either side. So
yep.
It's becoming more and more popular up where I am, just because of the it's good for heat rating, thermal rating. So it will it's better for where I live in the cold, and it keeps the cold out and the heat in. So it's out there, and you have to think about, again, the structure when these things start to burn, and also the other part of that is what's coming off of that material, right? The hazards, the smoke. What's in that smoke that can hurt us? So some of the some things that don't contribute to fire would be your concrete, your glass, your steels, your stones. That stuff's not going to help. It's not going to add to the fuel load per se. So those are stuff, when you see things that are built out of that, when you're doing your size up and your 360, those are stuff you're looking for as far as what potentially can happen to that building. So building collapses. So from some of the stuff that I looked into, it sounds like this is, not an uncommon thing to happen in your regions. Is that safe to say? You guys have building collapses?
I think that's safe to say.
Yeah,
that's safe.
Definitely more than in my area. If we have a building collapse, it's like, that's a huge thing, and it doesn't happen very often. But unfortunately, from what I've researched, it sounds like it's pretty common, unfortunately, where you guys are, some places anyways. So what are some of the reasons you guys think that you guys might have issues in your response areas for building collapses? What are some of the things you're hearing?
Our biggest one is just shoddy contractors, where they cut corners on using materials. So they cut half of the materials and use half. So then the building comes up, then it can't support its own weight. That's usually the biggest problem.
Yeah. So how does that play into to you guys as first responders, right? How does that make you guys feel when you roll up to a fire and or even just an emergency scene, or you just go into those buildings, right? You have no idea what it was. That a good contractor, or was it a bad contractor, right? So that stuff is kind of something what we talked about a couple weeks ago about our 360, right? As you're in your response areas, as you're seeing some of these buildings go up, take a close look and see if you have some building construction background, or people know, right? Are they doing the right things? Are they cutting corners? Because it might be something that you we talked also about pre-planning, right? If you find out how good that building perhaps is, it might be an idea, just something to think about. I know it's hard to control, but at least if you're aware of it, then that may help you down the road in the future. So I got some things out of a study by the National Construction Authority. They did an assessment in 2018. Out of 15,000 buildings, approximately 11,000 were unsafe. 1,200 were fair, and 2,200 were safe. So that's, you know, as you guys probably know, because you guys are living it, that's pretty scary to have that many buildings that are deemed unsafe out there. And like you talked about, some of the things are poor workmanship was one of the leading causes, and then non-compliance to building standards, and the inadequate design and overloading of the structure. So you're putting too much stuff in there and it's not designed for it, or they're getting, you know, improper materials. I've also read a bit about them getting like not just cutting corners on the materials, but getting stuff that's like recycled instead of using, you know, proper new materials. So they're trying to cut corners on cost that way as well, and then not hiring proper trades to do these this construction. So people are not knowing what they're supposed to be doing, and that can add to the breakdown of some of these buildings. So we talked about that. So as far as building collapses, what do you guys think when you come up to, if you see this scene here, what are some of the things that you guys are gonna want to think about as far as hazards?
One, down power lines.
Power lines, yep.
The other structures that are next to it, if they'll be prone to collapsing.
Mm-hmm. So has anyone on this been involved in a call for a collapse like this?
Just
the one I'd been to was, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say just last November, right, while we were hosting our training symposium, I want to say that there was a collapse, a building collapse that some guys went to. Trying to think where that was. Was that Kisumu?
Okay.
Go ahead, Errol.
It wasn't in Kisumu. It was somewhere around Kiambu.
Oh, Kiambu. Yeah. That's what I meant.
Okay. So yeah, it's something I've never dealt with. So you can see all the different structural membranes or members there that have collapsed, and it's kind of pancaked on itself. So that would be a bit of a challenge, because if you have to go in and try to find survivors, now you're, you know, there's no way of telling what kind of structural stability is left, right?
Nairobi City had a sort of a string of these a little while ago, where there was a number of building collapses, but they happen everywhere. It was just in the, New York City, in Manhattan, just yesterday, there was a parking garage, that collapsed and killed one person. And so that certainly complicates things, because now you got vehicles in amongst all the building things and everything as well. So.
Yeah, they do happen everywhere. Good. The building condition. So when we're looking at doing our even our pre-planning, or we're driving around our response areas, or we're going to a call, we have to be thinking about that building condition. So that's kind of that pre-planning, or when you're driving around, you're looking at different buildings as you drive through your response area. What's the condition of them? Have they been involved in an incident before, right? Whether it be a fire or partial collapse or not. And what's the age of the building? Has it been taken care of? I see buildings in my response areas that are, we call them dilapidated. So they're run down. They haven't been properly taken care of. So if you were to go in there and to go for a response, you could be compromising. I've been into buildings with holes in the floor, stairs that are missing. So again, you never know what you're going to find, but that building condition can play a huge role in the safety of us, and how the fire is going to react, or even the collapse potential. So you got to look at your risks when you're arriving on scene to these. And a big thing is during those drive around in your response areas, and try to see these and be aware of them before you're actually going to a real call there. Contents. So different contents affects what's going to happen potentially in that. There was a fire in the 80s that I like to reference, the Hackensack Ford fire, which you guys may or may not know. If you can look it up on YouTube. And that one there was a Ford dealership, and fire broke out, and it got up into the attic, and they were storing a whole bunch of car parts and stuff, and it had the interior attic fell and trapped some people, and there was some line of duty deaths because of it. So it wasn't designed to carry that load. No one knew it was up there, or the first responders didn't know. So we can get ourselves caught into bad positions because people are putting contents and stuff where they're not supposed to. Or like in this picture here, it could be what we call a hoarding house, where they're just storing a ton of combustible materials, and that's just going to add to the fuel load. So it's going to make that fire a lot bigger and a lot harder to put out, especially when they're all stacked Class A materials like that. It's going to make it difficult. Higher heat release rate, bigger fire, hotter fire. Depending on where that content is, can cause more collapse. So our risk assessment, so we've kind of been talking about that throughout the whole thing. We got to be looking at that building on our scene size up. You know, what's the risk of that building? If it's already collapsed, is it going to collapse more? Is there any survivable space that we can attack? Could we get into that building and do any kind of searching, or is it too far gone, either building or collapse, or if it's a structure fire? So those are parts that we have to think about on our risk assessment and our size up. What impact has there been from fire and or structural stability if it's like a collapse, building collapse? We got to be aware. And we talked about it in the size up, your response time. So how quickly were you able to get there helps to determine potentially how long that fire has been burning, depending on, again, when that call was actually placed into the dispatch. So if you're, 2 or 3 minutes to get there and it's like a thatched roof, it could be completely gone. If you're into a concrete structure and you show up within, 10 minutes, then you're going to have potentially more time. So it all depends on kind of what materials are being built, and also how long the fires are burning and your response time. So why do we care? Knowledge is power. So the more knowledge we have about what type of building construction, what type of buildings, materials are being made of, is going to help give us that that knowledge that we can make those good decisions as far as our assessments and our hazards. So it's just more about being aware of what's there, how the heat's going to affect those materials, and what kind of hazards we're going to walk into. So we're not caught off guard, right? We're anticipating, if that's a thatched roof, when we show up, we're anticipating that roof is going to be completely burned out, right? If it's a concrete building, maybe we can assume that we're going to have a little more time, and we can probably go in there and check some of the offices or some of the building. If we have our BA and proper PPE and stuff, we can do that. So it's just all about knowledge. And that is it for the slide. So if we just want to we can take a few minutes and just kind of have some discussions over some of that. I like some of you guys have a lot of experience or some experience on some of those materials. And I'd be interested in talking a little bit more about the collapses and stuff, because I'm not really familiar with that. So if anyone does have some information on that, maybe they want to share.
Yeah, Brian, I'll just comment on the collapses. Most of the collapses we'll have, I think, in Kenya as a whole, normally are not from fire as such. They're usually from the poor construction. Mm-hmm. So like the ones where you're showing where the house is pancaked like that, that's the most common one we would find. Either it's been constructed or it's already been constructed and there's people living there and it collapses. So a lot of the times the response is mostly a search and rescue most of the time, and not really a fire. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's usually the biggest thing.
So as far as your search and rescue, what are you guys doing as far as like your risk assessment to go in there and do, to pull people out? Are we doing one, or are we just kind of like how are we approaching that as a fire service?
The biggest thing you normally find is by the time you show up, the crowd is already there before you, and they're already in there trying to take people out as fast as they can. So by the time the fire service normally gets there, it's pretty much just trying to get it organized to where now they can start doing a proper structured, rescue system, as opposed to just grabbing any hand that you see sticking out and pulling it out. And the fire service now tries to do it systematically, where they'll go floor by floor as the other agencies come in to help. Yeah, but initially it's usually a free-for-all with the crowd just going in to help, because they actually know the people who live there. Mm-hmm. So, they kind of, it's more of an emotional thing at that time.
Right. So on that, I know I picked up, and we talked to a couple of weeks ago about the stoning. Does that still happen when you show up to these collapse buildings, or is it the same, different? Do they want you there more, or is it the same kind of outlook?
I know with the stoning ones, it's a bit different because it's not more of a fire one, so you're not really putting off anything. What really drives the emotions up is the lack of the response. If nobody shows up at all, or somebody shows up way too late, that's when now it gets a bit crazy. The stones can start flying. But normally, if the fire service shows up on time, then in tandem with the crowd, they work together, they help each other. Yeah, so it's very important for the guys when they show up early, and then they can start doing something together. But if you show up really late, the crowd does get agitated very easily.
So what are some of your response times? Like, I don't think we talked about this last time. Are you guys all within 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
I think I'll throw that to the guys in Nairobi. Errol, what's your response time out there? I'm not too sure. Or Kiambu guys, I know they would have, or Taita Taveta, Mombasa, they probably know more about the individual areas.
The response time is not 20 minutes exact. Sometimes it takes hours to respond, by virtue of receiving the call and also heading towards the destination.
So you're talking like multiple hours, like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's sort of a twofold problem where without a consistent phone number to call in an emergency, and without public education of knowing who to call or when to call, that's the first issue. Is that a lot of times the fire brigade is behind the ball from the start because they haven't been notified that there is an incident, and then there's the issues of the distance and the travel time, trying to navigate through traffic, and traffic yielding to an emergency vehicle doesn't always happen. And certainly the traffic is much different than what you would be used to. There's a lot of chaos on the roads, just sort of generally, before we even add in the emergency vehicles and things like that. So that can really put these guys well behind, where they're showing up as soon as they can get there. But because of other factors, it's much later than the crowd wants.
Mm. Yeah, so you guys are really in a tough spot then, eh?
The plus side to that is the public education, certainly in Kenya, has been going well, and educating the public to that fire prevention and also that community sensitization, where you're educating the public how to get a hold of the fire brigade, to not stone them when they arrive and things like that, has made things improve quite a bit in recent years.
Absolutely true, Chief Mike.
Yeah, just like here in Malawi, we face almost the very same scenarios, only that the problem here is that people are not aware of who to call in case of an emergency, like a fire or a vehicle crash. So usually some people will prefer calling the police, then it will be up to the police to call us. But when we conducted an exercise about our response time within the city of Lilongwe, the maximum that we did out of the peak hours, where there's no much traffic in the roads, was about 11 to 15 minutes. But
Okay.
now it was coming up to 20 minutes or 30. I'm talking about the boundaries of the council, not outside the city council.
Mhm.
In the peak hours, where traffic was just heavy, we were recording up to 20 or 25 minutes to respond to a scenario within those boundaries. Yeah, one other thing is that because of lack of sensitization, a lot of people think we have those GPS machine or some kind of a machine that watches all around the city that will notify us about a fire or something. So there is need for a lot of public awareness for the people to know what to do in case of a fire or a vehicle crash. Sure.
Good. Okay. So yeah, you guys face a lot of challenges for everything you guys are doing. So,
and those response times aren't awful. In a rural volunteer setting in the U.S. here, you're not rolling out of the station for 6 to 10 minutes after the initial call, and then sometimes a 10 to 15 minute drive. So those numbers aren't that bad.
No, not at all.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I will continue where my brother just ended. I mean, the same applies to us in Ghana. We do drive for sometimes 45 to 1 hour to respond to a fire call. And it's not easy. And for them even to have our numbers, the emergency lines, is very difficult for them. But when there's emergency, they'll be complaining. We've called them. But when you go to the scene and starting asking them, what was the number that you called? Then they don't know what to say. See, because of our system that we are living, and they are also refused to, learn from us or partner with us. So always there is a confusion. But of late, this current chief officer is doing his best. He has, moved everybody from the office to the public. So always the education is going on. So for now, let me say from last year coming, things are changing slowly. So it's not easy, but we are managing and be coping with them to educate more of them so that they will understand the kind of job that we are doing. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, and again,
everything's moving forward anyway.
Just to add on what Emmanuel has said, unlike how our friends from the West do, like in the city here in Lilongwe, we only have one major fire station and a substation that we call it like a private one, but it's a subsidiary of the city council because it was not actually the city who facilitated the establishment, but it was actually the companies, the industries that are trying to minimize the risk of the fire by making sure that there are measures to tackle the fire in case it erupts. So one other thing is that we have minimal resources and very less brigades to respond to different areas. That's one thing. The other thing is that the road conditions here are not that advanced as you may expect. So at one moment you'll be in your beacons, you'll be in the Silines, but you see the road is just very small. The edges are bad. No one can give you way. So you have to wait up until the traffic has been cleared. So it actually sometimes affects the response time.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Time. Okay, well, I need to take off. I have another meeting I have to get to. But I want to thank you guys all for letting me come on again. And hopefully I can see you guys again sometime. And I appreciate all of your time and your feedback and your expertise. I learned a lot about building construction materials from you guys. So thank you very much.
We are
Thanks
grateful,
a lot, Bryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. We really appreciate you coming and joining us today. And thank you to everyone else who's joined us for today's training. If you'd like to see this training one more time, we'll post it on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Africa Fire Mission. I'd encourage you all to share the training links with your friends and join us again next week. Thanks, everyone.